Carolina Panther offense. I'll tell you what I did with Carolina Panthers. I really went back to the last 5 games. I didn't bother. Usually I try and take this thing all the way. Well, okay, what are some of the trends? What are some of the things that we've seen? It's a different football team the way they played now. The last 3 weeks with them, with Kansas City, with Tampa, Philadelphia, they've been a much better football team offensively. Matter of fact, the last 5 games, Panthers 2-3. Could have won a couple more of those games.
Could have won all of them, maybe.
With the way that they're playing, but their quarterback is playing much better after sitting down. Now, what you're going to get from Carolina is, and I didn't know a lot about this Dave Canellis. I knew he did some good things at Tampa Bay, but I really didn't know what kind of scheme that he's going to play. He's really big into play action, and he's really big into crossing routes. He's into like wide receiver delays, and I mean delay and bunch formation, and then kind of scatter and kind of confuse you a little bit when it comes to having to play some coverage. They play a really condensed offense, and I mean condensed by 3 wide receivers on one side, a receiver on the other side, single back, but it's a really tight group.
Receivers aren't going out to the sideline.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's not spread out. So what they do is they make you condensed as well to have to play that way. And so they've done a really nice job the last several weeks of being able to take that and then make teams have to try and match up with them. They don't have big name wide receivers. That's Thielen is their guy. When you start to talk about, they've traded away a couple of wide receivers at the deadline, but they're a group that's actually, if you watch them how they play, they've done a pretty good job of getting open, done a good job of catching the football. The last 5 games, this kid's averaging 250 yards a game passing the ball. And there was a time there where I wouldn't think he could get 50 yards passing the ball, how bad things were. Kind of have an offensive line that's a little bit a bunch of bullies, not some big name guys. What you're going to have to do with them is they thrive on just their ability to play with some power. So they're going to come off the ball. They're going to try and get into you. They got a back in Chuba Hubbard that's going to be a physical back that you're back to. The Cowboys are having to deal with a back that can legitimately run the ball, averaging 4.7 yards a carry. What I have noticed when you watch him play, though, he's had his success against teams that are poor run defending teams.
Okay.
So mark the Cowboys as a team that has had their struggles with run defense. But if you look at what he has done, carrying the football, he's punished some teams like the Giants, the Bears, the Bengals, the Chargers, the Raiders, and now look at the Cowboys. Yes, the Cowboys have improved in some areas since the early games. Dallas is still the 4th worst in the NFL when it allows yards, but when you're looking at yards per carry. So I wouldn't anticipate that the Panthers doing anything other really than trying to run the football here, and trying to see how good Dallas is. We've seen them play better, against the Giants. We saw them play better against the Commanders. Last week against the Bengals, there was some times where it wasn't a 100 and 120 yard game or anything like that, but they had some positive runs.
It's interesting that Brian, because they're getting like 280 in the air over the last 3 games. Now I'm just seeing the stat on that and some highlights.
Yeah,
and with just Thielen, where's all that production coming from? Yeah,
what they're doing is though, like I say, they're wide receivers. They've got Leggett, who is a rookie, and he's their most targeted guy. But it's funny, Thielen was out, and then now he's come back, but he's their most reliable guy.
Okay.
So they have a rookie who's a high target, a very reliable player in Thielen, and they have another receiver named Moore that also makes these contested catches and stuff. So this guy, it's kind of like when watching Dak play. Remember all the contested catches? These receivers don't have great speed. So they have to try and scheme them open, and that's what I was talking about, the bunch formations, movement, and then back and forth kind of stuff. And that's really where the production has come. It's where Young really works, and I was kind of watching this. I'm like, okay, let me see, give me the breakdowns of where he's throwing the ball. It's hitches, it's outs. And if you look at what the Cowboys last week against having to deal
the outs were a problem.
With Chase. 10 of his receptions was out routes, breaking routes, like 112 yards, 2 touchdowns. Dallas didn't particularly cover out routes very well last week. And, maybe that's something that you'll find out that the Bengals, I keep saying the Bengals, but the Panthers will watch this tape and they'll say, okay, how do we attack Dallas? Dallas going to play zone, just keep running out, so they're not going to drive on the ball. So that's something that you have to be ready for. The hitches, the outs, and the goes. That's pretty much been how the Panthers have been able to attack their opponents. I'll say this about the quarterback. He's had some really big halves. When I was watching the tape, against the Buccaneers, he started the game against the Bucs. He was 10 of 18 for 177 yards. Against Kansas City, he was 15 of 26 for 186 yards. This guy's had some big halves.
Are they first half for both?
First half for both.
Okay.
And so they've had a little bit, maybe this is why they're losing some of these games, is because they haven't been able to finish like they need to finish. But he's had some big halves since he's come back from being benched. So Dallas has got to be ready for that.
Since
for sure.
Andy Dalton got into a fender bender and afforded Bryce Young the opportunity to play more football.
He's been playing better ball.
Dave Canales was credited a lot last year for Baker Mayfield's resurgence, getting the ball out quickly.
Yep.
Is it very much so trying to get the ball out super quick?
It's trying to get the ball out quick, but it doesn't. There's still those times where this guy
buys time.
Is not sure. He's still kind of but I will say this. He's done a much better job. When it used to be when you pressured him, it was thrown up for grabs. It was not going to be. It was just, I'm going to throw it up and hope my guys can make a play. He's been more accurate with his throws when having to face pressure.
That Chiefs game, watching that Chiefs game, it felt like he was under duress quite a bit, and he was standing short in the pocket.
But
slinging it.
Yeah.
The one player that kind of flashed to me watching Carolina was their tight end, Tommy Tremble, 82.
Yeah.
What do you think about him?
Tommy Tremble, though, remember, we were watching him in the draft. South Carolina, I believe, is where he was out of. They've done a pretty good job with using these tight ends. What's funny is what I've really noticed about the tight ends is how they block. Okay, and this is what people have done against the Cowboys with the double A gap blitz. But Carolina does it a different way. They'll get in like an inverted wishbone where they'll put the back directly behind Young, and then they'll have the 2 tight ends on either side. And then when they go play action, they just step the tight ends up, and that's how they protect the front, is what they do. So teams, remember I was talking about how teams have taken tight ends and put them up on the line of scrimmage or right behind the centers, the guard, and the gap. The sniffer backs, and they put those sniffers up there to kind of handle Dallas's in the middle, those double A gap blitzes. I wonder how much of double A gap blitz and we're going to see from Mike Zimmer now that Overshone's hurt. Is this something that he's going to go to with Leofau? Is he going to incorporate that now as part of? Does Leofau now become the Overshone player where we see him? Now we saw him at Notre Dame have some blitzes.
The timing's good.
He's really good. What's really interesting about him is he's also the way he gets around the ball. When there's been turnovers or ball on the ground, this guy's been involved with the sack, and him and Wilson had the sack the other day. So it'd be interested to see how Mike, if teams start playing him where they're going to have those sniffer players, what's his answer for being able to get pressure without going through the middle? If that's how people are thinking about this team here. Okay, this offensive line, like I said, there's kind of bullies to them the way that they play. The scheme puts these offensive tackles on one-on-one a lot of the time. Their offensive line, I felt like that they'll miss some assignments and make assignment mistakes, and that's how people have been kind of getting pressure on them, that all of a sudden it's a twist stunt, it's a movement stunt, it's a linebacker, we didn't pick him up. They've had some problems that, in those games that I was talking about, that they had some free rushers on Young. And so they Dallas Dallas has got to find a way. These, like I say, these tackles about 81% one-on-one, and they're kind of big, heavy-footed guys. So need to make sure that quickness, movement, things like that, I think will give this offensive line a little bit trouble that way. So with the offensive line, it
smells like opportunity to me, Brian.
It is an opportunity. I mentioned about Thielen, the wide receiver. And he's had a couple of really nice weeks.
Yeah.
Against Philadelphia.
Top plays.
Yeah, Philadelphia, he had 102 yards, and against Tampa, he had 99 yards. This guy can't run out of sight. He can't. I mean, he just can't run. He can't run, and he never really was a great. The route running was fine, but he never could have that breakaway speed. But he does have enough juice, I think, to kind of shake himself free in some of these routes that they've been running. He's sneaky in the way that he plays, and you have to be alert for him on these crossing routes, as I'm talking about, and then those delays out of bunch formation. They got Kansas City a couple of times where he was kind of holding back. They ran everybody off, and he held at the line, and then the play kind of developed, and then he started running, and nobody went with him. And now he's running into space by himself. They find a way to get him the football. They've been doing something, too, they got Kansas City a couple different times off that little pop pass. And I mean, like, they bring a motion guy across, and Kansas City had just huge problems trying to cover the little pop pass. And it's something where we've seen it before with how the Cowboys run it with Turpin, where ball snap, just boop, bunt it forward, and then you take off and running up the field. And another thing I think we're really, really worried about in this game is Hubbard can catch the ball coming out of the backfield.
Sure can.
Okay. So what happened last week, against Cincinnati?
Chase Brown was their second leading receiver.
Chase Brown killed you on some of those routes and stuff. They'll put Hubbard out. They'll go empty formation, put Hubbard out wide, run him on some routes up the field. They'll put him in the slot, run him some. We saw that with Chase Brown. And I think watching the Cincinnati tape from Monday, that Dave Canellis, this crew's like, listen, we could take advantage, especially if they want to put Donovan Wilson in coverage, that we could take advantage of some of these matchups with Hubbard and see if, in fact, that they can make some plays out of that.
That's another place where you will miss Overshown.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the speed's not going to beat you over the top, or the big play with the broken tackle. That's fantastic.
I don't think so. I don't think that they're, like to say, they're not. That Cincinnati bunch was a different animal when it came to, and of course the quarterback was a lot different. But like I said earlier, though, guys, this quarterback is playing a lot better, and he's playing with a lot more confidence. And the mobility that we saw at Alabama, where he'd take a snap and if it breaks down, he's now taking off and running.
Right on.
He sees a gap and he's going to go on. So a little bit different matchup this week, but some things you got to worry about. Let's talk about these Carolina Panthers. Defensively, they're one of the worst teams in what plays defensively in the National Football League, and for reason. They're going to play. They play a lot of their base. They don't play a lot of nickel or dime. And they don't particularly play well against the run. They've struggled against the pass. They don't get pass pressure. You would think that with Clowney, A'Shawn Robinson, the defensive lineman who they got from the Giants, has really kind of been their best player. They miss Frankie Louvu, who they had last year at this time when Dallas played Carolina. Frankie Louvu. We saw what Frankie Louvu did when he was with the Commanders. He's done a really nice job for them. They don't have very good linebackers. Their secondary has been a problem for them. They don't get a lot of pressure. J.C. Horn, we all remember J.C. Horn from the draft. Mm-hmm. Him, Surtain, those were the two guys that Dallas was kind of holding on. Mike McCarthy had coached J.C. Horn's dad, Joe Horn, at the Saints. There was talk that the coaches were leaning towards J.C. Horn, and the scouts wanted Surtain. So if it came down to that would have been a little bit interesting dynamic there.
I'd been pulling for the scouts on that one.
Yeah, me too. Surtain was
I mean, there's a lot of people that really like J.C. Horn. I will say this, though. Mike Jackson, the left corner number 2, he gets picked on a lot in these games. People have gone after Horn a little bit, but what they've gone after Horn he hasn't allowed, like, completion percentage against him is not very good. So I think you have to be careful if you're Cooper Rush in this football game. Only the Indianapolis Colts in the secondary, and their secondary, play more off coverage than these guys. These guys average 7 yards of cushion.
Wow. So the 4-yard turnaround routes are going to be they're going to be money.
The hooks, the slants, all those things that Mike McCarthy loves to call.
This is what the doctor ordered?
This is a doctor's ordered game for Mike McCarthy, and a little bit of a doctor's ordered game potentially for the Cowboys wide receivers, because
Mingo, revenge game, breakout game, hello. He might have 2 catches for 9 yards.
Yeah, the one thing that Cowboys have not been able to do very well is the separation. That has been a big problem with this football team. So keep an eye on that. Cowboys should be able to run the ball well in this football game. And also, though, if they want to throw the ball, I think it'll be there as well. Not a lot of pressure here. Trying to attack Mike Jackson in this game. And then if you can hold up the front, I think there's some ability. Like I say, they should be able to block these guys well enough to let Rico Dowdle have a really, really nice game.
Can you give Cooper Rush like a 20-yard pocket so he can feel comfortable maybe?
I don't know about that, Dawson. I know one thing is, though, when Clowney's on the field, they have a little bit more pressure. When he's off the field, they have no pressure. So it really kind of depends on off and on guys and stuff like that. This defense is just really, really bad.
Okay.
And so, but they've been in games against Kansas City, Philadelphia, and people like that. A lot of it is because their offense, I think, has improved over the last several weeks.